So the topic for today is competitive analysis. How do you go about really understanding what your competitors are doing and using that to try to help drive your thinking and really maximize what you're doing with your digital properties or even non-digital products? The reason I want to cover this topic today actually is a slightly selfish reason. Those of you who have bought the book already, Winning Digital Customers, which by the way came out a few weeks ago and went to the number 2 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. So thank you everybody who's bought the book. And I know it's a very detailed book, so many of you are no doubt still in the early part of it. But in addition to the book comes with a password to a website that contains a wealth of additional material, including videos and additional PDFs and chapters that were omitted from the book and templates and many other tools to help you with your digital transformation. So certainly if you have the book, I really want to encourage you to go check out that website because there's tons of good stuff. But I'm not saying all that as a commercial. I'm saying it as an explanation for what we're covering today, because I just found out that one of the videos on the bonus section of our book website, meaning it's the section only for people who buy the book. So let me bring up a slide or two here. So in the book, we talk about competitive analysis, and we really talk about it 2 key reasons why competitive analysis is so important. One of them is, well, you're competing, right? So if a product's going to be successful in the marketplace, in the book, we talk about 2 keys to product success. Well, we talk about many things, but in the context of a value proposition of a product, we talk about you've got really 2 hurdles that you have to jump over. And the first hurdle is the product has got to be worth it to the customer, right? It has to be a product that whatever it is that you're charging, whether it's dollars or whether it's just the time they have to invest or whatever else, it has to make sense for the customer. Otherwise, they're just not going to participate. They're not going to buy it. They're not going to go to your website. They're not going to download your app, whatever it is that you're trying to drive behaviorally in your customer. So that's the first hurdle. And presumably your product is solving some kind of problem for the customer, whether it's helping them get their laundry cleaner or helping to entertain them when they're bored, or whether it is helping them figure out what size shoes to wear that will fit better or lose weight or whatever it is that your product is doing. It's trying to solve some kind of problem for the customer. And the truth is that it's not enough to just provide a good solution to a problem because you have competitors. So in order for a product to be really successful in the market, it has to not only be worth it to customers, but it also has to be a better value than the alternatives that are out there. If you're offering a credit card with a low 12.9% interest rate, but your competitors are all offering 8.9% or 2.9%, well, you potentially have a problem. I only say potentially because it depends who your customer is, right? It could be that you have other attributes of your product that make it better than the competition for a certain segment of customers. And that's fine because not every product is going to be the best choice for every type of customer. One example we use in the book is that video conferencing equipment that you put into company conference rooms can cost tens of thousands of dollars, but it's super high quality. But other people just use Skype, which is free, or depending on how you're using it, might cost you a few cents a minute, far, far less expensive. So which is a better value proposition? Well, it kind of depends on the customer. There are many customers for whom they'd much rather have something free, but Skype's quality is not the same as what you get from video conferencing equipment installed in your corporate conference room. So point is, you don't always have to be better than the competitor for every customer, but in order to have a successful product, you have got to be better than your customer, at least in the eyes of some people, or else you're probably not going to sell very much of your product, except to people who are very uninformed and don't know that there's a better alternative available. But there's a second reason that looking at doing competitive analysis is super valuable, which is to learn. Because very often when we look to improve products or customer experiences, we're looking, as we talk about on this live cast all the time, looking to solve some point of customer pain. Well, it could very well be that you have competitors who have already solved some of those points of pain. And naturally, you want to take a look at what they're doing because you may be able to just take inspiration from what they're doing and take a shortcut to a solution. And by the way, you may have competitors that have tried to solve a point of customer pain, and they're doing a terrible job of it. They've attempted to, in order to solve the problem of customers not understanding how to assemble their furniture product, they've created a virtual reality experience that shows you how to assemble the product, but customers aren't really using it. So they tried and failed, right? Well, the failures of your competitors are just as valuable to you as their successes because they could save you a whole heck of a lot of time and energy, not spending time trying to create a virtual reality simulation because you know that doesn't work, or at least the way in which that competitor tried to do it. Maybe there's another way of doing a virtual reality simulation. So really understanding what your competitors are doing is very, very valuable because A, you have to beat them in order to win in the market, and B, because even in areas where you're not going to necessarily beat them, they may have just figured out something that was helpful and gives you a shortcut to success and a better product. So in the book, I'm not really going to go into this, but in the book, we just point out that when you go to study quote unquote competitors, you could argue that there's some different categories. The first type of competitor most people think of are what we call direct competitors. This is Chase versus Citibank, Coke versus Pepsi, McDonald's versus Burger King, Nike versus Adidas, right? It's another company that's probably trying to do something very similar to what you're doing. They're probably offering a very similar value proposition, and they're probably a somewhat similar scale to you. Although there could be direct competitors who are at a much smaller scale as well that you want to look at, because McDonald's should be looking at Burger King, but who knows? There might be some small new franchise that's only 6 restaurants in Wyoming that's doing some really cool new stuff. It's great to know about that because sometimes small companies can innovate more effectively and rapidly than your largest competitors. And even though you're not too worried about the lost sales to that competitor, from the perspective of learning, they can be some of the most valuable. So direct competitors, though, are those who are more or less, if you're a hamburger restaurant, they're a hamburger restaurant. Then you have disruptive competitors. Those are somebody like an Airbnb would be to a Marriott, or an Uber would be to a Hertz rental car. In other words, they're disrupting your industry. They're providing another alternative. Then you have need obliterators. These go one step farther, right? The whole need for a library is being obliterated by ebooks potentially, or certainly the need for bookcases in people's houses is being reduced because people are downloading more ebooks. So this is a competitor that's not trying to do the same thing you're doing, but they're doing something that's causing what your value proposition to be less valuable. And lastly, are comparative companies. And those are companies that aren't going after the same market you are, but you might have something to learn from them. For example, many hospitality companies might look to Apple and say, wow, the experience they give you in an Apple store, maybe there's things we can learn from them for how we handle people who are waiting in line at our hotel, for example. And similarly, other companies may learn from hospitality companies. I know many banks have studied the Ritz-Carlton or other top tier hotels, again, to learn about the way they treat their customers and give them a premium experience. So those comparative companies are also valuable, not so much from the perspective of jumping over that hurdle, because of course they're not going after the same customer or the same dollar you are, but certainly from the perspective of learning. So we go into all this in much more detail in the book, but that's kind of like the basic high level of what we talk about in the book about the tiers of competitors. But what we don't really go into in detail in the book is, so how do you go about studying those competitors? This is one of the topics that we had to take out of the book for length. And so therefore we put the video on the website, and now we're going to redo it. So I want to talk now about 8 specific techniques that you can do when you're conducting competitive analysis. So assuming you've already figured out who your competitors are, and you've used that other model to make sure that you're including, of course, your main direct competitors. If you're, a Hertz, no doubt you're looking at Avis and whatnot. But if you're United, you're looking at American and Delta, but also some of those other categories. So now you've got a portfolio of companies. You say, these are the competitors that we want to look at. But now, what do you do then? How do you look at them? So here are 8 things to look at. The first thing I always advocate looking at is message. What is it that competitor is telling the market about themselves? And I like to think about message in a little model that I use, which is the generic message, the differentiation, and the offer. The generic message is, how are they categorizing themselves? For example, they're an airline, they're a fast food restaurant or a quick service restaurant, they're a grocery store. And it may very well be that the way they generically describe themselves is very similar to the way that you describe yourself, because they're direct competitors. And the generic description, banks are banks, right? Airlines are airlines. But it would also be very interesting if they were messaging themselves in a way that was a little different. Starbucks doesn't describe themselves as a coffee shop. They describe themselves, as a cafe. And so just understanding if the competitor is positioning themselves exactly the same in the category as you are, or in any way different. So that's the first thing to look at as part of message. The second is differentiation. Every brand is trying to tell the market, here's what's different about us. We're more luxurious. We're a better value. We're higher quality. We care more about our customers, etc. Now, the truth is that depending on what message of differentiation that competitor is communicating, it may or may not be true, and it may or may not be believed by their customers. I don't know how many people believe that United is a friendlier airline, even though they have for years been telling us to fly the friendly skies. I think United is a perfectly friendly airline. I fly them all the time, but I certainly don't go on Delta and discover that people are less friendly. If I go on JetBlue, I don't find people are less friendly. I have flown some airlines like what's that one in Europe? I don't know, EasyJet, I think, where they definitely are less friendly. But in terms of the main large US airlines that United competes with, I have not observed that they are friendlier than most of their direct competitors. So they attempt to message differentiation. Some people may believe it. As a customer, I don't know that I believe it, but I still fly United all the time. In any case, the point is to understand what is it that they're saying is different about them. And lastly, their offer. What are they offering? How does their price compare to yours? Are there payment terms that are different from yours? Are there bundles that are different from yours? Part of the message is, hey, you give us this and we'll give you this in return. Cable companies offer all kinds of bundles. If you commit for 3 years and you give us your cell phone business, we'll also give you this discount or we'll throw in HBO. Understanding what they're offering, because obviously that's an important competitive point. So that's the first thing, message, with those 3 components of message. And it's very easy to find out what your competitors are communicating from a message perspective. Just look at their website. Just look at their advertise. It's typically very, very straightforward. And as you're looking at message, then that dovetails into number 2, which is marketing techniques. In other words, how are they getting the message out there? Where are they putting the message? What channels are they investing in? For example, are they buying advertising, magazine advertising? Are they doing Facebook advertising? Are they engaging with influencers? Are they holding events? What are the different ways in which they are marketing themselves? Now, there are a lot of different ways to get this information. If they're a major national brand, it may be obvious, right? Just open up any magazine and there are their ads. There are also services and tools you can use to get this information. In the digital world, for example, there's one called SimilarWeb. And if you look on SimilarWeb, it will tell you about any given brand, for example, where they're advertising, what ads they're running, how much they're running them, things like that. Banner ads or social media ads, things like this. And there are other tools as well. And I can only get into so much detail here in this video because I've got 6 more things to cover. But there are a variety of tools. Avail yourself of the tools that allow you to make sure that you know what kind of media buying they're doing or what kind of social media campaigns they're running. What are they doing to try to get that message, number 1, out to the right people? And by the way, who do they seem to be targeting? Even though it's not one of our 8, but between message and marketing techniques, you can figure out what customer are they going after. And is it the same customer you are? For example, you might be going for kind of middle income households and they may be going for a little more affluent customer or vice versa, or they maybe seem to be targeting women more or what have you. So you can read between the lines of where they're marketing, how they're marketing, and what they're saying to see if you can kind of reverse engineer who do they seem to be going after. Now, we're going to talk later about what exactly to do with all this information, but these are the kind of detailed things you want to try to be understanding about your competitors. The next is experience analysis. So beyond marketing, what is the actual experience of the product or service? Now, of course, that's going to vary a little bit based on what kind of competitor it is. It might be looking at the website user experience, the app, the features of the app, the layout of a store, the way their associates are trained. Obviously, if it's an airline, what are they doing on board? What food are they serving? What entertainment are they providing? So, if it's a bank, it may be what does the interior of their banks look like? How are they handling while you're waiting in line? Or, do they have a counter you go up to? All these types of things. Essentially, taking a look and kind of analyzing and inventorying what are they doing. If they have features on their website that you don't have, you want to know that. Does that mean you need those features? Not necessarily. They may be features nobody's using, but nevertheless, the first step of competitive analysis is just to understand what are they doing. And that may mean, by the way, that you need to go to the next step, which is mystery shop. So experience analysis means, I go to the store, I look around, I have my clipboard. One of my user experience analysts goes on the website. They do an inventory. They say, what are all the features? What is here? We're looking at the product or service or experience that's provided by the competitor kind of from an analytical perspective. Mystery shopping is a little different. In mystery shopping, we take on the persona of a customer and ideally engage in a real world shopping experience. And what I mean by real world is if I'm booking, if I'm trying to have a travel, if I'm trying to mystery shop United Airlines, in a perfect world, I actually have to go somewhere, right? I'm not just going on the website and theoretically booking a trip, but I actually have a trip I need to book. And or if I'm buying a gift, if I'm mystery shopping, the process of using the gift registry at Macy's, I actually have someone I need to give a gift to, or whoever's doing the work has an actual need, because you're going to see that experience in a much more nuanced way, in a much more accurate way, than if you're just like, well, let's just imagine that I was buying a gift for somebody, because you don't have a real person that you're buying a gift for. But when you're really buying a gift for somebody, you have different problems you're trying to solve. Well, what if they need to return it? And more things will occur to you. So I really encourage you to do your best. Now, there are times when it's tough. If you're doing the dialysis center somewhere, and you're not a diabetic, I'm not saying you should go in for dialysis, but in most cases, you want to try to find people who have some kind of real need to actually experience the product or service. If I'm trying to do this for H&R Block, I'm going to bring in my taxes, and I'm actually going to go through the process of having my real taxes done, etc. And you really want to do the mystery shopping. I feel like actually the mystery shopping, I'm using that term because it's a very common industry-wide term, mystery shopping. But in reality, I feel like it's not the best term, because I don't think you should just be shopping. Shopping implies wandering around, I'm looking. But I think you should be mystery buying and mystery using and mystery having problems and mystery calling support for help, right? I realize this is a mouthful, so I don't have a proposed alternative label for the industry for mystery shopping, but I just don't want you to think about mystery shopping only in terms of shopping. I want you to think about, if I'm mystery shopping for a checking account for a bank, I want to look at the different options and I want to talk to them, and I'm going to open an account and I'm going to get my checks and I'm going to write some checks and I'm going to set up my bill payees and I'm going to go through the whole process, and hopefully I'm going to have a problem or two. And if not, I'm going to invent a problem or two so I can call up and ask questions and really understand what is the full life cycle of that customer journey look like. And then I'm going to try to add another product and apply for a credit card and see whether, do they know that I'm a customer of their bank? Are they a checking customer? And do I get appropriate treatment? Or am I asked once again to tell them my name, address, and social security number? All those types of things. So there's mystery shopping. I know I talked about that for quite a while, but try to create a real world need and then really let it go through as much of that life cycle as is humanly possible. And in most cases, it should be possible to go through the whole customer life cycle. The next is reviews or other kinds of social listening. So this is pretty easy, but again, we want to understand how are real world customers responding to those competitors. The first three, we're looking to understand, what are they doing? And actually in the fourth as well, we're just looking at what are they doing and perhaps starting to understand, especially in the fourth, what's working and what's not working. By the time we get to the fifth, we're really trying to understand what is actually resonating with their customers. Because we could learn in number 1 and number 2 about what they're doing and go, oh, we better do that. Our competitor's doing that. Well, we could learn in number 5, yeah, people hate it. They just launched a whole new, a vegan menu on their airline. And even the vegans say it's the worst vegan food they ever tasted in their entire life. Well, that's important to know. Or they could have tried creating a cool new feature and nobody's using it. So nobody's talking about it. They launched some big thing with fanfare and you go to social listening and it's crickets. So for anyone who doesn't know what I mean by social listening, what I mean is that there are tools like Radian6 and others that will scan across like the whole Twitterverse. And if you give it keywords, that things you want to know what people are saying about those topics, they'll come back and let you know. If a new movie comes out, you can quickly scan and say, what are people saying about this movie? And furthermore, get a sense from something called sentiment analysis of whether people seem to be saying positive things or negative things and what the most commonly used phrases are. So you can very quickly have artificial intelligence that reads millions of tweets or other kinds of social posts and is able to come back to you with a reasonably accurate report without requiring you to go read all that stuff. And similarly, of course, looking on, again, depending on the industry, whether it's Yelp or whether it's TripAdvisor or whether it's Amazon reviews or what have you, taking a look and seeing what are real customers saying about this product, not just how many stars are they giving it. If they like it, great. Why do they like it? What are they praising? And what are they not mentioning? You could have a very successful product and it could have 10 key features. But what you'd like to know is, well, which of those 10 key features are really driving satisfaction? Because it could be it's only 4 of them. So it could be that if you want to compete with that successful product, you don't need those 10 features. You need those 4 features and then 1 more that's not in the 10 features that successful product has. That the other 6 features, nobody seems to be talking about them. Now, of course, they could be not talking about them because there's table stakes and nobody gets excited about them. You need to use your judgment when you look at this kind of information. But in any case, very, very valuable to start to understand what's actually happening. And another tactic with a similar objective is talking to customers or even talking to former employees, as long as you're respectful of any non-compete type agreements they have from their former employment agreements, to understand what the customer's experience is of that brand. What are they finding is really delightful and what are they finding is dissatisfying to them? Obviously, if you're trying to compete, you want to understand these things. And former employees can be very useful because they have an even broader perspective because they probably deal with a lot of customers. I mean, of course, it depends on the role of the employee. But for example, if you were to talk to somebody who used to work in customer service for American Airlines and you're United Airlines, understanding what customers were most happy and satisfied with as American Airlines customers and which things troubled them the most or that they complained about the most, this is very, very helpful information. And of course, that one employee probably dealt with thousands of customers in a given year or what have you, compared to just going off and talking to one customer or going and talking to 10 or 20 or 30 customers. So I would do both. In the book, we talk about the idea of direct customer research, but also customer experts as a source of insight. And I think that applies just as much to competitors as it does to trying to understand your own customers' experiences. So that's number 6, 2 more to go here. Number 7 is market success. So this is another technique to try to understand. The first 4 techniques are all about how to understand what they're doing. Then these next 3 are to understand, is it working and what of it is working? So market success could be anything from looking at their quarterly reports if they're a public company, like is their stock going up? Is their revenue going up? Are their sales going up? And how is that broken down? You know, some public companies will give you a pretty good breakdown by business unit, and others, they try to blur it and don't want to tell you too much, probably for this very reason, right? They don't want their competitors to know too much about what they're doing. But in any case, just looking for, and there are other sources as well. For example, if you look at something like Nielsen or NPD, again, it's going to depend on your industry, but these are companies that track consumer product purchases. So if I want to know how well the new Nike high top shoe is selling in Nebraska, I can buy that data from places like NPD or Nielsen. Or I want to know what colors are selling best and in what types of stores, things like that. So that type of data is out there. And so if you're make toasters and your competitors just come out with a new internet connected toaster that they charge $100 premium for, but has a really cool app, naturally you want to know, so how's it doing, right? If it's a dud, if no one's buying it, which you could learn things from reviews. You might read the reviews on CNET or the reviews posted by customers on Amazon. But then you can also, of course, take a look at that market success. By the way, Amazon also provides the Amazon sales rank for things that are on Amazon. So that's another place. It's not a precise measure, but you can also get the sense of how hot is this item? How much is it selling on Amazon? Of course, that's only one outlet, but it's a big one, right? So looking for all these different types of data points to let you know, if you look at the total value proposition that the competitors put out there, how well is it working? If you're an airline, you can simply look at the seat data. That's data that's available from companies like ATPCO, or you can just be going on their website and take a look and say, all right, the flight leaves in an hour. How many seats are available to buy? And that's a very crude way of doing it. But again, I'm just giving different examples because I don't know exactly what industry you are in. We worked on a really cool project with, I think I can say who it is because it's a publicly available product. We worked with Airbus, and they have a really awesome product where they have a network of satellites that take images of the Earth, like you'd probably typically see like weather, satellite images, things like that. But this data, you can buy this data from Airbus and you can request data of a specific area of the Earth that you want data on. And one of the applications is car counting. If you're a retailer and you have competitors that have their own parking lots, meaning they're not in malls, they're like in a place where you could literally see if it's a Target or a Walmart, how many cars are in the parking lot, you can actually pay someone to take satellite imagery of the parking lots of all of your competitors around the world so often, and then run algorithms that are actually able to take that image. You don't even have to look at the image. You can just have the algorithm look at the image and count the cars, and it'll figure out, okay, there's 100 cars in the parking lot, or now there's 10 cars in the parking lot. And on that basis, figure out how well the store's doing. And there are all kinds of different tools like that that are really designed to help you understand how successful is your competitor right now and which competitors are more successful, which ones are less successful. And then, of course, you want to map that back to what they're doing because, of course, you're more likely to want to take practices from competitors that are more successful. And the last one is just trades, rumors, and announcements. Perhaps obvious, but naturally you want to do things like create Google Alerts. So if your competitor is launching a new product or announces something new that they're doing, a new upgrade to the app, et cetera, that you're aware of it, if they're announcing it to the world, you're certainly entitled to know about it. And depending on the industry that you're in, there may be sources. I'm certainly not advocating any kind of industrial espionage or anything that's illegal. So don't take this from what I'm saying, but there are certainly places that post, like for example, if you're in the high-end camera industry, there are sites that post rumors. Like for example, one site I like to go to is SonyAlphaRumors.com. Now that's mostly because I'm an amateur photographer, but I like to know, so what's the rumor of what new Sony products are coming out in their high-end, mirrorless camera lines? And now, of course, it may or may not be true, right? So you got to take rumors with a grain of salt, but there's similar websites for Canon and for Fuji and other high-end cameras, and similarly for Apple and Samsung and other manufacturers of smartphones and other consumer products as well. So that's another place where you can get, not always accurate, but information about what's going on. And also, of course, trade papers, right? A lot of industries have different types of magazines or online or websites where the latest kind of news and to some degree gossip of that industry is discussed, and people are speculating on what leading players might choose to do next. Stock analysts sometimes often do that, speculate. If they're covering one of your competitors, they may be speculating on what that competitor might do next. Of course, you can't absolutely rely on that information, but, well, they're paid to try to speculate as accurately as possible. So that's another source. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a lot of techniques. You don't have to use them all, but I would rather have you have more than you need rather than feel like, yeah, I don't know how to go about this. So, and of course, some of these you may already be doing. But if this gives you even a couple of new things to try in your competitive analysis, I really do believe that this is a very, very important part of any kind of planning or visioning for what you're going to do next in terms of driving your product, whether you're just focusing on marketing your existing products in a better way, or whether you're focusing on some kind of a digital transformation that completely redoes the customer experience, or whether you're just trying to come out with next year's version of your steam iron or whatever it is that you make that's not digital at all. In any of those cases, I still think it's very worthwhile to be looking at these types of competitive data points. And it can be done without it being too terribly time consuming. I mean, we just spent 20, 30 minutes talking about a bunch of different techniques, but if you have a couple of relatively junior level analysts spend a week or two looking into this, they should be able to gather quite a wealth of information. And I would just end by reminding you that obviously this information is not static. Clearly, any information you gather about your competitors today is going to be stale in, well, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, a year. In some digital realms, it might be 2 weeks. But so bear in mind within your industry, how quick moving is it? And you want to get really efficient at this process so that you can do it regularly and get it refreshed. And every time you go back to refresh it, take a look back at that list of the 4 different types of competitors, because you might want to throw some different ones in. Probably want to keep your big main competitors the same. But if there's some other ones, comparative companies you're looking at, or disruptive competitors, or need obliterators, you might say, well, we looked at that one last time. Let's swap in. Let's look at some different ones and see what kind of insights come back.